Hi, everyone. All right. Nice to see you all. While we're waiting for folks to show up, I'm going to just kind of give you a little warm up, maybe change your brain from whatever you've been doing all day. It's a little bit of a puzzle, so here we go. Hold on a sec. Okay. Words can you make here? A couple of rules. The word should have 5 letters or more. Okay. You have to use the E in the center. You can use a letter more than once. Okay. And if you use all 7 letters, you get 3 points for that word. Okay. Just oh, you're looking at me. Is this what you're going to do? But give it a shot. Play around with it. This will give us a chance to wait for everybody to show up, and then once everyone's here, we'll get started. Here we go. Okay. Call them out if you're seeing any. What do you got?
Little.
Little, nice. What else?
Plexi, like plexiglass.
Plexi, good start. I don't see the rest for glass though.
Yeah. Oh.
No. And then I had pixel.
Pixel, that's a nice one.
Velvet.
Velvet, sweet.
What was the word?
Velvet, like the material.
Oh, nice. Good.
E-text. A hyphen.
E-text. All right. How about pellet?
Oh, yeah.
I'll give you a hint. Velvet is an example of another word you can make there. In other words, velvet is a thing, but it belongs to a bigger category of things.
Texture?
Texture, you're getting there. T-E-X.
Yeah, there's no...
E-X-T.
Textile.
Textile, there you go. And I'll give you the big hint. If you were looking at this and you're going, oh, you were about to say an expletive. Yeah. All right. That's my joke for the night. So here's what we are about tonight. Okay. That was our little opening exercise, just a honeycomb. We'll go over the working agreements that we set last week. Then we'll just take care of some class business, make sure everybody's cool. We'll get into our major topic around college and career readiness, okay? We'll take a 10-minute break at just about 7. And then we'll go into looking ahead to your first assignment, okay? And in that since most of you are not working in schools, although we have a new member of the class who, I don't know if he's here yet. Gerardo, are you here yet? No. Who is a teacher, and he's going to be joining us. So I've tried to work out some ideas for access for you for that assignment. And we'll go over the rubric for grading. I do not have examples of that to share with you. So the best I can do is we'll talk about it, and we'll go through the rubric to let you know what we're looking for. We'll look ahead, and then I have what I hope you'll enjoy as a closing activity. Okay. Any questions about what we're going to be doing? Okay. Let's just go ahead real quick. There we go. Okay, these are the working agreements that we set up last time. Okay. If you recall, step up, step back means everybody's participating, basically, is what that is, right? If you are somebody who is typically quiet, that's okay, but there are times when we want you to step up, right? We don't want you to just be lurking all the time, listening all the time. If you are somebody who tends to talk a lot, be aware of that and step back sometimes, okay? You all said that you liked hands-on work in class. We're going to try, hopefully we'll do that tonight. You like having PowerPoints as notes. We agreed that we need the confidentiality of what we say here stays here. The take care of yourself piece, right? If anybody, if you need to leave for a second, if you need your phone, you can take care of yourself in a variety of ways, right? You can shut off your mic for a minute. You can shut off your video for a minute. You can step away for a minute. I think I might have shared with you that occasionally my daughter travels to really dangerous parts of the world, right? And so I need to have my phone present at those times. She's back now. She was working down on the border in Matamoros. She's back, so I'm cool. My phone can stay where it is. You're liking getting feedback on the work, timely posting of documents as you need them, and you like to have active discussions, okay? Anybody have any questions about any of those that don't make any sense to you, or you want to revise them in any way? Okay. Anybody have any special needs tonight that you want to let us know about, so we don't think anybody's being rude or anything? Okay. All right, cool. So, taking a look at business just for a sec. I had a couple questions I just want to check in with you guys on. And I'm going to need you to speak up because I can't see everybody at once. So if you have a question about this, you're just going to need to chime in, okay? Something's not quite right here. Hold on a sec. You can also put it through on the chat, or you can raise your hand with the chat, okay? So first question, has everybody got the book, the Theo Harrison Brooks book? And if not, is anybody having trouble getting it? You all kind of responded, so I'm assuming you have it. I just want to double check. Okay, that's a single edition book, so even if you needed to get a used copy, it hasn't changed at all. Okay, so that's good. All right, cool. Is everybody doing all right with the different tech pieces? Finding your way around Blackboard, Zoom is working for you. I'm curious, just for a second, how are you liking the Flipgrid thing? So. Could you say more than just wave your hand? So tell us a little more, Courtney. You're gonna have to. You're muted right now.
Kind of
There you go. Sorry.
nerve-wracking a little.
Yeah.
Like video yourself and trying to make it fit into 2 minutes. I thought like 2 minutes would be too long, but it's actually not long at all.
Okay. Should I make it longer?
No, that's fine.
You don't have to use all two. No, you don't have to use all the time, but it did seem to me that a lot of folks like would kind of make notes for themselves if they had to go in 2 minutes, it's really supposed to be conversational, right? That was the idea of it. I haven't looked at it today. Did anybody respond to each other's yet? You can, right? So I notice that you're looking at each other's. Please feel free to respond to each other's too, okay? In later ones, I may ask you directly to respond to them, but for right now, it's sort of voluntary, okay? All right, cool. Just another piece of business, and the signups on Doodle. Actually, somebody just signed up a few minutes ago. I think I saw that come across my email. So there are a few slots left for each, just so you know, okay? It's not urgent. I just wanted to keep you up to date on that, okay? There's like a month, 5 weeks before the next thing, but that'll just help you plan, okay? And last thing, any questions, any concerns anybody's got? Okay. All right, let me stop sharing just for a second. So, all right, we got 12 of us tonight. All right. There ought to be 2 more people joining us, but I don't see them yet. All right. So a lot of what we're going to do tonight is just talking through this idea of college and career ready. We're looking kind of at the macro level about what curriculum is all about. Okay, the big goals. I noticed in the flip grids that you guys were kind of blown away by all the things that a principal has to deal with. You're like, holy cow. I had no idea they were thinking about all that stuff. And it's true, right? The curriculum winds up being kind of one of those anchoring documents that, at least in theory, everybody can relate to and can deal with. The other piece that you read around the different sort of analytic ways of seeing a curriculum, I think that'll make more sense to you as you start to see more curriculum documents and you start to hear more dialogue about how people are talking about curriculum. It's all super theoretical at that level, right? And it's a little hard to get your head around if you're not actually engaged with it. But the way I've tried to set up the courses that we go from theoretical to applied, and so it's going to start to make more sense as we make our way through it. Okay, tonight is a little bit the same, but we're stepping into what has been the gigantic theme of curriculum. I'm going to guess at your ages. This college and career piece, calling it that, started while y'all were in school, okay? But it's not new, okay? Has anybody ever noticed that that schools kind of look like factories? Yeah, does that, no? But they're like big and square, right? Everybody's in their own little space. They're run by the clock, right? Oh, it's third period, right? And everybody moves. And even if you were in elementary school and it was all in the same room, the clock ruled everything, right? All of that stuff was very, very intentional. Very intentional. So schools in that model, this is no longer the one-room schoolhouse, right? You all were, I'm sure you were, put together with people, the only characteristic that you all shared for sure is that you were born in the same year. Like, well, why? I mean, everybody in there shared some characteristics, but that one you shared pretty much for sure, that everybody was born the same year. Right? So the reason for that, all of that, is that that model of schooling was set up to train workers for an industrial economy, right? The school calendar is still a remnant of the agrarian economy, right? The reason we have summers off was so kids could work the farm, right? So it's a remnant of that. So you see some of those echoes still. But certainly when I was coming up, and then, Sarah, can you hear me all right? I just saw you pointing to your ears. You're good? You're just letting the folks know that you're in school? Okay, all right. When I was coming up, there was a serious divide between college prep and work prep, right? There was very much two tracks in school. Once you guys hit school, and since then, this whole college and career ready has been assumed to be pretty much the same thing, right? And you saw in that first article we read that most of the skills that we're aiming for, right, are synonymous in both places, right? The ability to handle ambiguous information, solve problems, work with other people, all those kind of meta skills and ways of thinking about it are going to apply in the workplace as well as in college. Okay, so that's been the game. That's been the goal. So we're gonna break down now into groups and sort of talk through that. And I'm going to send you into small groups, right, and to talk through these various questions and then bring that back. All right, clear? All right. So let's see. Back to sharing. All right, so taking a look at this college and career ready. What I'd like you to do as you're in these groups, I assigned you those two readings around college and career readiness because they're actually in a dialogue with each other, right? The one is talking back to the other. You know, you have the first one that's sort of explaining the whole thing, and then the other talking about Latina students when they get to college, and how did that not serve them so well. But she's referring back to the authors of that paper are referring back to all the ideas around college and career readiness that you saw in the first one. So in your groups, here's your first question to deal with. Why? Why college and career ready, right? I gave you this very thumbnail sketch just a second ago, but why? Okay. You may need to jot these down because I don't think you'll be able to see this question when you come back. Second, and here's for something about it. If that's a legitimate goal, right, then what should schools do? Second is, if it's a legitimate goal, then what should schools not do? What should they leave out? Last question is, actually two questions together. And this is where your second article gets at this, right? Who's well served by this college and career ready thing? And who gets left out? You'll notice that these are pretty big questions. There's the whys and the shoulds in the first three. Curriculum documents are really about shoulds. This is what schools should do, right? It's kind of aspirational in that sense. What do we think school ought to be doing? Right? Then we start getting to the reality of, okay, so what are we actually doing? That's a conversation we'll start to have a little later, right? But a lot of this is, why are we doing this and what should we be doing? Before I send you into groups, does anybody want any clarification of these questions? No, we're good? All right. There's 11 of you, one of me. So I'm gonna create 4 groups. So most of you will be in triples, okay? One will be a foursome. I'm just gonna do it randomly for now. I've not encountered this before. Hold on a second.
It's okay.
The women.
Yes.
Well, I just thought in general, like coming from a lower income family too, like I understood how, like for instance, when the families were like, we need you to come babysit, and some students were privileged enough to say, no, I have homework, and like that was a valid excuse. Where other students have to kind of like balance those options and kind of see where they fit in. I think I identified more with that. Where it's like seeing if college is right for you and your family. Like pursuing that is worth it.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Makes sense to me. I'm wondering what you all think.
So yeah, I think it makes sense as well. And I feel like too, when you're in high school, you feel like, how is this going to relate to my career and like working, or even just a college focus, no matter what it is. I feel like it's hard to feel and be 100% prepared entering a school, especially when you're mixed in with such a diverse group, because I believe that it had mentioned that the high school that this individuals in the study went to were in a school where it was basically like Hispanic based, but then when they went to the university, it was more white based. So I feel like getting used to that switch over of diversity and just basic functions of it can be really like blindsiding at first, that it can be a lot to take on, along with like having to work and then study. So kind of just, there's no real way you can adjust to that. But
Yeah, I find it's interesting too, because like I went to Rowan for undergrad, and they also had a program for, I think it was just schools nearby for students who graduated higher up in their class rankings and were also from lower income areas. And there was one girl who I played rugby with who always kind of like stigmatized certain girls in the group because she was from, you know, like a different cultural background and economic background from us. And so even though we were all very close, like there was always some like unspoken barrier between us, in which she bonded with people who were also in that same program with more so than us. Like it created a weird divide where like we were doing similar things together, but we really weren't like connecting.
mhm.
Have any of you, I'm going to ask this question and then I'm going to jump. I'd be curious to know if you, we're bleeding a little bit into the next question, but if you thought that the college and career readiness as it was set up served those women well or not, right? That clearly there was some, like Savannah, like you were talking about with their needing to adjust to a whiter environment, right, in college than they had in their high school. So what was, talk more amongst yourselves about what the mismatch was there, what was going on. Okay, I'm gonna jump to another conversation. See you guys soon.
I'd say like one of the mismatches is
So I mean, another thing was that I read is like at first they obviously felt like this like discord of like, you know, they're rich and you know they're able to go on fancy vacations and go on yachts and we can't, blah blah. But then like at the end they were able to find some kind of like just a sense of like commonality by being like, we're students in the school, we go to the same school, we have the same education, and therefore like we shouldn't like be too focused on that. And maybe like that's also like a coping strategy or something.
Yeah, sort of being like, yeah, we might have had different start points, but based on where we are now, are going to have pretty similar outcomes for our futures.
Yeah, because peer support factors a lot into success.
Exactly.
So having that like tight knit community would go really far. What would you say schools?
In these groups, you guys are all sort of foreshadowing the next question in some interesting ways. So maybe I set up that question well, or maybe I didn't set up this one too well. Did you, when you read those two pieces together, right? Did you get this sense of the first one? Okay, yeah, that seems like a great idea. I can get behind that. And then you get to the second one, like, oh, dude, here's the reality of how that's actually playing out in practice. Tell me more about that mismatch.
I thought it was like yes and no. Like it was like, because I read it in that order. So in the first one, I was like, yeah, it makes sense. Like, you know, everyone needs the basic skills and basic knowledge, you know, to be career ready and college ready. And then after reading the second article, you know, it was more like realistic about how like there's so many factors that like not many people can have the same opportunity to accomplish those things. But at the same time, it was eye-opening, kind of like maybe we should, you know, really factor this in when thinking about making the curriculum, just so that it's not too many people fall behind and like, you know, that kind of thing.
Those are serious choices, right? Anthony, what were you gonna say?
I think very similar to Grace, for me at least, the first reading, I was kind of like, oh, that reflects like my experience in going to college and having success. And these are all the skills that I was taught in high school that I was able to use and really adjust well. But when I got to that second reading, it was kind of like, again, like Grace said, eye-opening into reality, where I was like, oh, this is what happens with other people that don't have the experiences that I've had or haven't had that luck that I got to go to good schools and I got prepared really well. And that's how I got here. So it was really good to see that other side and keep that in mind.
That's interesting. I'm going to ask you to just spend a minute or two more wrapping up, and then we're going to bring everybody back together.
Okay.
All right.
So what would schools really leave out for career readiness? Or what do you think?
Like what schools should, like what they currently have and what they shouldn't have.
Yeah, like what could you cut to add in some of these things?
I mean, at least from my college experience, I feel like I had a lot of the positives. The one thing I could have done without, though, is the stigma against community college. Because, like, where I went, like, where I went, it was very, like, oh, if you fail your classes, you're going to end up at Bergen Community. Meanwhile, no one decided to share with us the fact that if you get certain grades on your SATs, you could actually go to Bergen Community for free, and that if you get a 4.0 from Bergen Community, you can go to any state.
Yeah, this is helpful because I wouldn't have been able to go today otherwise.
Yeah. I literally rushed out of work and was just
my nephew's surgery was today.
All right. We did all of it. Yeah, who gets left out is the kids that don't want to.
It shows up to the snacking and chatting part of the discussion. Got it. All right, you guys hit it all. Well, we'll come back together and discuss it all.
Okay.
Alrighty. So Sarah, you want to be our spokesperson?
Like something not completely academic based.
Like social based, like how good is your
Sure.
support system at school? Which is also important, like how able are you to connect with others? I have a question.
Yeah.
For the professor.
Oh.
Sorry. So I wasn't sure before, but I wanted to clarify like what you meant about the female specifically in the urban schools article. So I wasn't sure if like I was missing something or.
Well, well, it seemed to me as I read the two together, right, that the first was talking about what we mean by college and career ready in theory, right?
Yes.
Just what it should be, and it seems like a good idea. Of course, everybody would want to do that, right? It makes perfect sense. And then you get to the second article, and you're like, huh, that didn't work out so well, right? Somebody got totally left behind here, or this, I was not ready for college. You said I was going to be ready for college. I was not ready for college. What's up with that?
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, I'm going to bring everybody back here just a second.
Okay.
Hi, Brittany.
All right.
Are we in this together? I can't tell.
I'll be back. Kirsten, there you are. Okay. I'm sorry about that, Kirsten. I don't know what happened there.
That's okay.
I think maybe that an invitation did come across, but it went by fleetingly. So keep an eye out the next time we break up. And
Okay.
okay. Why did you? I was coming in and out of the conversations, and you came at this a little bit differently. Why do you think people should care about being this college and career ready thing? Why does it matter?
Some of the things that I jotted down was that I know most workforce places now require, or at least some higher education aspect. So I do feel like that's important. I came from a family with a father who didn't graduate high school, who's now going through unemployment issues and now is having difficulty finding jobs because of this, because they want that higher education, they want that high school diploma. So I do feel like that does affect even the blue collar, low end workforce jobs. And that's something that I mentioned. That was pretty much all I wrote down for why it's important to be college and career ready as, you know, high school, as students leaving high school.
Anybody else?
Like adding on to that, I feel like because so much is happening in high school and there's obviously like no other opportunity to kind of have that exposure to kind of learn of what to expect for colleges and careers. And I felt like my own high school didn't really introduce us to all the different majors. Like you kind of had to figure it out on your own. My sister was older, taught me a lot of things, but there was no one place for me to learn like any of the routes I could have taken. So I feel like that would just really help students.
Others? Let me ask you the second question, or we'll come back a little bit more to the skills, the kinds of thinking that are there in college and career ready. But let me jump to the next question here for a second with all of y'all. When you hear people talking about schools, you know, you may not be in a lot of those conversations, but sometimes at Thanksgiving or wherever, people are like, you know, kids don't get a chance to whatever, finish that sentence anymore. Schools really ought to finish that sentence. What are people saying when they say that? Schools oughta, kids oughta, but they don't.
I feel like a lot of times I've been hearing like, you know, learning how to do your taxes, learning how to, you know, apply for housing loans, doing like just like the basic things that some kids need to do coming right out of high school that don't do, or are very reliant on their parents to learn these functions instead of like the school systems, you know, teaching them just basic adult tasks. I mean, I find myself having issues with some of this stuff, trying to figure out how to do different things now that I'm on my own versus, you know, some things that might have been helpful to have in college.
Okay.
I mean, have in high school.
We, my group kind of talked about something similar where we talk like the schools focus so much on college preparedness and like vocational type trade preparedness that often they leave out students who aren't going into either of those things and like who maybe just be going into retail and kind of working their way up. And so I think another important thing they should incorporate is like resume, like making their resume and like interview skills and how to function within a work environment straight out of high school. Because it can be different from school, especially if you're not on the track for college. So I think that's something that they should focus on too.
That's interesting. Theo, you were going to say something.
Yeah, talking to college kids, one thing I keep hearing is they would love to learn about credit in high school because that's like a huge pitfall for them. They're getting these credit cards, they're sending them in the mail, they're using them, and it's like, I actually have to pay this money back. I didn't know about interest. I don't know about any of this stuff.
Yeah. Catherine, you were nodding your head. Did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, because I was in the group with Grace and Anthony, and one of the things that we were thinking that, of course, like bringing back like trade classes and home ec and stuff, but also offering almost like application workshops, especially for first generation college students who don't have parents that could really help them through the process. So like that was on our list of things that like schools ought to do these things to, I guess, give everyone an equal opportunity to have I guess at least some sort of plan after they graduate, whether that is a four-year college or a trade school.
I got it.
Yeah.
So this is fascinating to me, right? So when we talked about what college and career readiness is about in general, it was this very economic vision of what schools are for, right? We're training you for a job, either for higher ed and then a job, or for a job right away. But it's a thoroughly economic vision of who young people are. They're going to be workers. And then when I asked you guys, okay, so what should folks get in school that they're not getting? Interestingly, you all went to personal economics, right? How do I apply for a credit card? How do I do a budget? How do I fill out or the personal skills of getting a job, right? Resume, all that kind of stuff. Fascinating to me. Does anybody ever hear people say, kids ought to be able to play more? Right? Have you heard that?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's follow that thread out. Why did people say that?
So I was at my internship site visiting last week, and I was talking to one of the fifth grade teachers, and she was talking a lot about how the kids there can't compromise or have conflict resolution skills on their own because they're too busy either studying or playing by themselves on computers. And she was saying we need to let kids be kids so they can learn how to interact with one another and build those early social skills.
I'm going to come back to that in a second. I see Eunice and Courtney.
I was actually gonna like bring that up the playing more, but I wasn't sure if we were focusing on like the curriculum or the in-school part, or if like other parts is gonna be like included. I was gonna say that yeah, like kids, they worry a lot about their homework. When they get out of school, they go straight home and do homework until their bedtime, and then they wake up and do the same thing. And a lot of kids are like they have too much anxiety for someone like their age, because like they don't get to just really experience their age.
Great point. So, I mean, this economic purpose for school has so thoroughly dominated what we think school is about. You weren't even sure if you should raise that question in class, where the stakes are super low. Like you could ask anything here. This is school, right? And Anthony makes a really great point in sort of a phrase that we hear all the time, but there's something to unpack there. This idea of let kids be kids. Because the way we've got this all set up now, right, is that high schoolers are seen as adults in training, right? Middle schoolers are seen as adolescents in training. And the little guys in elementary school are seen as, you know, also as adolescents in training. Like, it's always about where you're going next, never about where you are, right? And a full development of who you are at that time, and a full, right? It's really fascinating. It's really fascinating that it's always this forward-looking thing. And the thing that it's looking forward to is work. so much, right? There are some of the aspects that you guys were pointing out around anxiety and around conflict resolution. I'll bet if you go back to the first article, you can find that, right? Just, you don't have to go read it now, but just what sticks in your mind as something that would have dealt, for example, with conflict resolution that was seen as part of the college and career readiness? It was in there, or something related to it. If we need people to be able to collaborate, right, conflict's gonna show up. Like, it's gonna happen, right? So that skill's got to be there, right? And working your way through stuff is gonna happen. Is it gonna be in the curriculum as we write it, though? Interesting question. Are we gonna set it up so that conflict happens and then can get resolved? That's interesting. We're going to look into that a little bit later, right? Especially when we get talking about Common Core learning standards, right? Yeah, Eunice.
The conflict resolution part, I would think that falls in the hidden curriculum part.
It certainly.
And the social emotional learning part.
Well, it can be hidden. It can also be made more explicit, right? Some of the hidden curriculum stuff that we saw show up in the second article, right, is around, wow, this has all been set up on white norms. Where were we, right? We're not included in that, right? And all of a sudden, we're left with this deficit in terms of the cultural capital and the knowledge we need to navigate the situation, right? It didn't build on our strengths. It assumed we were going to acculturate to this other culture. We were going to adopt those norms, and then if we did that well, right, then we could succeed, right? So yeah, so those are big issues. We're going to get again into those things in more depth. Did anybody wonder about, there are huge areas of life that schools, if they're going for college and career readiness as their primary goal, don't deal with. Right? Spiritual dimension of a person's life. Now, that's kind of problematic in a secular state, right? Like, because public schools are the government, right? So they can't promote a religion per se. But that may be something that you say, okay, yeah, we're not doing that. That's for families to do, right? But that's a whole dimension of life that we're not going to kind of deal with in school, right? Other areas, I mean, we talk a lot, especially when we talk in the news, about how everybody's gone into their silos, right? And they don't deal with people who are different from them, right? That's kind of the hidden curriculum of some, as we were saying, of some of the college and career readiness, but we may have to pull that out more directly. So I'm going to break you up into groups again. You started really getting into this question a few minutes ago, but I think I'd like to hear you go into it more deeply. And that is this. Okay. You worked your way through these things, right? Who's well served, who gets left out. And when you were getting to that in particular, you started answering this question, which is, how well did that work out for you and people whom you knew, right? If college and career, if this economic, not even citizenship, right? It's not about voting per se, it's about college and career so much. How well did that work out for you and people you knew, okay? I'm gonna, again, move you into groups. So here we go. When you see your invitation come up, be sure to grab it. I'm gonna assign everybody to 3 rooms again. Try it again. If it doesn't work, I may have to stop it and bring you back. This time will take about 10 minutes, okay? Here we go. You and me again.
Yeah, there must be something
There's
that's
something
not
not
working.
All right, I'm gonna
Yeah.
close it all. I'm gonna just assign you guys to rooms, so this will work.
Anthony and Grace, that like one of the things that my school did was that they really had like a huge stigma against community college and would use it as a threat if we didn't do well in school. So I could have saved many dollars by going to community college and then transferring to my undergrad university.
I feel like that's a common theme because like most teachers went away to school, so they're like very pro 4-year college. Like even if it's like a state school or something like that, like they really put, especially if you go into like AP courses or honor courses.
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't even
It's a little biased.
And it was the guidance like the college counselors and guidance counselors who were telling us that it's like you're supposed to be guiding me into the right direction.
Yeah, like
not
all
just,
the
like
Yeah.
forcing me to do what
Yeah,
the
they
True.
make it sound like unless you get into a prestigious school, like you're not gonna succeed, and that's not right at all. Because you can succeed in many different ways. You don't have to go to a prestigious college, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I had one friend who joined the Navy, and the guidance counselor our senior year tried to talk him out of it, to tell him to go to college instead.
Oh my God. Yeah.
But like
I know this.
now he's an engineer,
Yeah.
and he can work as an engineer when he gets out of the Navy next year, and he has like plans to do that. So it's crazy. They
he's
kind of
probably-
like shut us down.
Yeah, it's probably not like drowning in debt. So
Yeah, really.
Does anybody know anyone who was totally like, this means nothing to me. I don't want anything to do with this curriculum.
like college in general.
Or yeah, or even what school was teaching. Like I can't. I'm dropping out. I'm done.
Honestly, I've had that thought. Like right out of high school, I wasn't sure like if I wanted to go to college or not, or like maybe take a gap year and experience something else besides school. I ended up going to college anyway.
I feel like in this day and age, like they think high school is like the basic thing you need to have. Like, and now it's more towards college is like the basic thing. Like everyone goes to college, like, you know, and I feel like that standard definitely went up. So,
Going back to Dr. Borstein's point that school is basically to, I guess, like manufacture workers in the end. And also like Grace's point that before the standards was everybody had to have a high school education, and now everybody has to have like a college degree to get a job. But even then, there's still a lot of people who are out of jobs, even if they do have college education. So like, what exactly are companies or businesses? What are they looking for in applicants in terms of education? Like, how do you get a job?
I think that's interesting too, because like so many like school-based professionals have pushed like particularly high school students to go to a 4-year or like post-secondary school, that like not so many went into the trades, or like they've kind of pushed students who didn't perform as well in school into the trades. And so now it's flipped, like the trade, like people, I guess like the trades in general, speaking like they're a person, but now they need more people and they're paying more money, and you spend less money in schooling to get there. It's like kind of flipped the whole like career outlook for at least like our generation. Now it's kind of changed. So I think that's interesting. And like I even had a friend who she started going away to school, and then
Hudson County Community College is more affordable. So that's why I ended up going there. And I'm not gonna lie, I think the process to transfer to a 4-year university was very hard. Like I feel like there was no guidance to where I should transfer, so I ended up transferring before finishing my associates, because I feel like going to community college kind of like delayed my graduating. Like I took longer there than anticipated, but yeah, I finally did transfer, and yeah, it was.
I think that's probably like depending on like which you go, like where you live and what school you go to. I
Mhm.
mean, I feel like my high school didn't really prepare you well for college. There were a lot of people in my grade that like were very used to not having to try in school and like trying classes, and then once they got to college they kind of had that same mentality that everything would come easy to them, and it didn't. So a lot of them dropped out because of that, and like kind of just went and got different like odd jobs that they could find, and now a lot of them are finally going back to like community college to finally start up that process again. And I mean, like the community college near me, it's very easy to transfer from Rockland Community College into like any SUNY school because it's part of that system.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I don't know how it works in New Jersey, but like it seems like it's a lot more difficult for where you're from.
Did anybody have any friends, we're going to have to be quick about this, or know anybody who was like, this is not preparing me for anything I want to do?
Yeah.
There's nothing about this that I want.
Yeah.
I'm out. Right?
Not like dropped out, but like there are people that I know from my school that they were like, this isn't preparing me for what I want to do, and they ended up going to like we had BOCES programs where you could go for like cosmetology or like culinary arts. So people would go and do that half the day, and then the other half the day they would do like their core subjects. That's cool.
Anybody know folks who dropped out?
Yep. Just before you came in, I was saying that a lot of people from my year ended up dropping out because my school didn't really prepare us.
Dropped out of college or high school?
Oh, I thought you were talking about college, not high school.
No, anybody know folks who didn't finish high school?
I think there was one person in my group.
No, I don't know anybody.
All right, we'll take a look at those. Some people call it dropout, some people call it push out, right, in terms of whether school meets their needs and or not. But we'll look at some of those dropout, push out stats later on in the semester. All right, I'm going to close the rooms. We're going to come all back together here. Hold on one sec, please. All right.
Oh, here comes.
I think we're still waiting for a couple more to join us. Seem to have lost somebody. There you go. Oh, they're on their way. Oh, here they come. All right. Wow. Get worried. You guys in that first room, I'm like, where did they go? Okay. That was interesting. As I popped in and out, I heard a lot around that same idea that high school didn't necessarily prepare people well for the culture of college. Or particularly, I heard a lot of folks saying that guidance counselors, teachers, and so forth were pushing four-year schools when community college would have been a great alternative for a lot of people, a good path for a lot of folks, but that didn't seem to be part of the mix. And one of the things that it seems that people here don't have a lot of experience with, we'll look at some of the local and national stats about this, is kids who make the decision, this is so totally not for me. I'm not even finished high school, right? Those get called dropout stats. I mentioned this to one of the groups. Other people have reframed that as push out, right? That it's not so much that kids are failing school, but that schools are failing kids. And they're getting pushed out. So that's a phenomenon we'll look at later. Oh, somebody was going to say something. I missed it. All right, we're going to take 10. It's 7:04. 5, so we'll come back here at 7:15, okay? I'm going to pause this. Everybody take a break. We'll be back in 10 minutes. All right. All right, welcome back. Here we go. So as we're looking ahead to this assignment that you have, I was thinking more and more about your situation. Almost nobody here, a few of you are in schools, right? So you have some access to people, but a lot of you are not. So I thought of 2 ways to get access here for you. One is I've put up links in the assignment. I'll show it to you now. Hold on a second. So if we go to the assignments, now I've created a folder now instead of just the one thing. There are links here to the mission statements of a variety of schools. Okay, Hackensack, North Bergen, Ithaca, which is a small college city, upstate New York. It's an interesting district. It's both rural and suburban and urban. Montclair, which you're familiar with, and New York City, which is, of course, the largest school, well, the second largest school district in the country after Los Angeles. So that gives you some access to the statements, but when you go through the questions that you're being asked, those really need you to have contact with people. So if you're in a school, you can talk to them, right? You can ask people about this stuff. You could talk to the principal, you could talk to other folks at the school. But if you're not, you could try just calling somebody in one of these places, right? Calling a principal of one of these schools, calling a teacher, just calling up to the school and saying, hey, I have this assignment for Fairleigh. Is there somebody I could talk to? One of the school leaders, maybe an assistant principal, something like that. Have somebody got about 15, 20 minutes. The other thing you could do is you could call back to your high school where you went to school, right? And talk with them about it. So you could do that research there, all right? So in trying to get some access, I hope that these will get you access if you don't already have it. If you're still having trouble, you could interview me, okay? And just set up a time with Calendly to talk with me. And I will, what I'll do is I will, if you need me, I'll send you a mission statement from a school that I used to be the leader of, okay? Principal of, and we can talk about that process, okay? That being said, again, the mission statement is a very high level kind of document in a school. Does anybody know it's now become kind of a famous story about NASA and the mission of NASA? Anybody ever heard this story? So the story goes like this, that no matter who you talk to at NASA, they could tell you what the NASA mission was and how they fit into it. And the most famous part of that story is that somebody who didn't really believe that was so was at NASA and catches up with one of the one of the janitors at the facility. He says, what do you guys do here? What's the mission of NASA? He goes, oh, we send people to the moon. And he could tell you how the job he was doing made it possible to send people to the moon. Right. So that is sort of that's kind of the urban legend of how thoroughly you want people to know the mission. Yeah, Eunice.
There's a commercial for Indeed with that that story, like when it fades out, there's a janitor in the background.
Oh, yeah, I think I saw that. Right. So it's become now kind of an urban myth, an urban legend. But the basic idea is the same here. You know, we all should be pulling in the same direction, right? And we all should know where we fit and how we do. What I'm going to ask you to do is to investigate that and see if that's really true, right? In a place that either you work and you know it that way, or you've been to school there and you could find out in retrospect, or you could call one of those districts that I listed there, or you could call me. I'll be your guinea pig if you need. Okay. So let me share with you as much as I can without giving you a sample. Okay. What you should expect and what you can put into it. Go back to the PowerPoint. Okay. All right. These are the things that the national standards for school leaders, and they also happen to be the New Jersey standards for school leaders. They say that a good school leader does this with respect to a school mission. That they do these 4 points. They develop an educational mission for the school that will promote the academic success and well-being of each student. Okay, they collaborate with members of the school to do this thing, right? They articulate, advocate, and cultivate the core values of that school, including child-centered education, high expectations in students. Well, I will just say, just reflecting on that, the whole discussion we just had around college and career ready did not sound super child-centered to me, right? It was very curriculum-centered. So I'm just saying, it's an interesting tension there. And a school leader should be able to adjust the mission and vision to the changing expectations and opportunities for the school and what the kids need, right? So a good leader should be able to do all of this stuff. The question for you is going to be going back and seeing, okay, where I can find an example of a school mission and vision, how much of this seems to have happened? Okay, so you can do that sort of in interview fashion. These are the 4 questions that will help you get there. Okay, this is all, again, this will be posted up on Blackboard itself, but it's also written right into the assignment. Okay, so how authentically does that mission statement promote the academic success and well-being of every kid? You know, there's been a lot said about, we're here for all kids. Well, really? Are you there for all kids? And when you say all kids, are you thinking about kids who may be different from the norm of what you're expecting? I think that the article that we just read around the Latina students getting to college would tell you that they were not necessarily part of the all students in their high schools, right? How well did that mission statement reflect having been developed with stakeholder input? Stakeholder, let me just do a little vocabulary check with you guys here for a second. So do you know what we mean in schools when we say stakeholders? You may want to venture a guess. No, this is a new phrase to you guys, right? Stakeholders. Okay, the people who have a stake in the school. So let's just talk about that for a second. I'm going to unmute everybody. You're all unmuted. Should be all unmuted. There we go. All right. Who has a stake in the success of the schools and the kids? Courtney?
The teachers.
Teachers. Who else?
Superintendent.
Superintendent. Yep. Who else?
The town officials, like the mayor.
Okay, so politicians. Yep.
The community that it serves, like
The community, people in the community.
Just like
Yeah.
anyone who lives in the town, essentially.
Okay, who else?
Board of Education.
Board of Ed, yeah.
Parents.
Parents, right? Big one. Parents, right? How about the kids? Right.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, all those grown-ups have stakes. Well, what about the children? Right? Yeah, so all of those groups. So when we say stakeholders, right, that's shorthand for are you reaching all those folks? And how well are you doing that? I got a really fascinating education in that from my friend, whose article you're going to read is coming up, Muhammad Khalifa. And he lives in Minneapolis, St. Paul. And in the district, they were talking about reaching all the different sectors of the community. And there's a large Somali refugee population in Minneapolis, St. Paul. There happened to be also at my school. Anybody know the Lost Boys? Anybody heard of the Lost Boys? The guys who fled the war in Somalia. They were the child soldiers who then fled. Anyway, those guys were my school parents in my last school. So they were saying to Muhammad, yeah, we reached all the stakeholders. We did a great job. His wife happens to be Somali. And they said, yeah, we got input from the Somali community. He's like, that's great. Which part of the Somali community? Because there are some parts that do not talk to the other parts of the Somali community, right? Like there's a whole lot of factionalism within that community. We're somewhat familiar with that when it comes to, of course, treating all communities of Latin American descent as though they were one community, right? The Dominicans, the Puerto Ricans, the Ecuadorians, the Salvadorans, right? Those they don't talk to each other in some communities, right? So when you're thinking about stakeholders, that can be a very complicated formula, right? So that's just something for you to think about as you're going into that assignment. Let me share that with you one more time. We'll come back. So how well were the stakeholders involved with that? And the relevant data? How well does the mission embody the core values we talked about, and how much is it adjusting to the changing circumstances, right? These are the kinds of things I'm going to ask you to think about and explore with somebody else, right? As you put that together, you can be writing that in several pages. You can be recording about a 10, 15-minute video, or you might record your interview with somebody, right? As it touches on this. If you do that, I'd like you to close up that interview with some concluding thoughts of your own, right? And you could add it as a second audio or video piece afterwards. That's up to you. If you do decide to do that, please assure the person that you're recording that the only place that video will be used is here in class. It's not going to get out. That's one of our working agreements, is that what we say here stays here, right? So it will only be used for this purpose. Everybody in the class has pledged confidentiality, right? So it's not going to go anywhere. That may help people to volunteer for that, okay? So before we go on to the rubric, are the basic expectations of this thing clear in terms of what the scope of it is? The kinds of questions you're going to be looking at, kinds of information you're seeking? All right. The rubric itself is listed in detail, and you can download it and have it. I'm going to go over it with you now in summary, just so you get an idea of what we're looking for. In sum, there are 4 areas: ideas and content, voice, organization, and conventions. Ideas and content is 40% of the grade here for it. Now, this is only a 10-point exam. 10-point assignment, right? It's not a major deal, but just so you know. It's looking at your evidence and your analysis. The best is going to be evidence that is compelling for those points we just talked about. You're meeting our expectations if it's appropriate evidence. You're not quite meeting expectations if it's a modest amount of evidence. And you're definitely not meeting expectations if it's minimal amounts of evidence. Okay, compelling is exceeding our expectations. Appropriate is meeting the expectations. Modest is not quite there. Minimal, you're definitely not there. Okay? Same thing with analysis. If your analysis is insightful, that with respect to excellence and equity, let me put that out. So excellence is a lot of what we were talking about in terms of the content of college and career ready, right? This is what it takes to be college and career ready. Those are the skills. Those are the ways of thinking. Equity, is it working for everybody, right? So you're looking for evidence of that and analysis around that. You're exceeding our expectations if you're being insightful about that. If your analysis is connected to excellence and equity, that's meeting expectations. If it's loosely connected to excellence and equity or just connected to one of them, you're not quite there yet. And if it has nothing to do with excellence and equity, you're definitely not meeting expectations. Okay? Your voice, you're preparing this for a professional audience or an audience of stakeholders, the kind of people we were just talking about, right? People who would be interested to hear about this. You can imagine, you know, maybe playing or sharing your analysis of the mission statement with the school or with the PTA or putting it on a website or something like that later on when you're a school leader. But for now, I want to make sure that you're being authentic, engaging, and accessible. Okay. When it starts getting awkward or inappropriate for a professional audience, that's when you're not meeting the expectations. Okay. Again, the rubric breaks it down in some more detail. Your organization is basically asking if you've laid it out logically, if you're making sense as you go from one point to the next. Okay, and the question there is, does your organization contribute or distract from your audience's understanding of this? Okay. And then the conventions are things like APA, spelling, grammar. You may have a couple of mistakes, that's not a problem, right? As long as they don't distract from the comprehension. You know, if they distract from understanding what you're trying to say, that's a problem. Okay. I just kind of threw a lot at you there, so let me ask you if you have questions about that. All right. There is a Q&A flip grid. You can ask questions there too, right? And I'll respond, and that would be a good place to put them. Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
Okay.
go ahead.
So just to like review how we're supposed to be getting this information. So if we already work in a school, would we still have to like essentially interview someone who's somewhere in the school leadership?
I think you will. I mean, unless you know it really well, if you've been around that school and you could answer those questions from your own personal experience.
Probably not. I was just saying, like, because I know teachers who would probably just, I'm thinking just about like scheduling, being that this is due in a week, and that where I work, it's a middle school and high school combined, and like the principal and the assistant principal are
crazy busy.
Yes.
Yes.
So I don't know how easy it would be to get a hold of them.
Oh yeah, no, anybody you can talk to about it. Just
okay, but and you would prefer just like a voice interview versus like emailing or anything, right?
It's up to you.
Okay, because I was just saying like what you prefer, because I feel like with an email people would try to be a bit more concise and not necessarily.
It would. It's going to be, those are pretty broad questions to put in an email though, right?
Yeah. So there would be a lot of back and forth.
You may have to figure out some follow-up questions to do with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah. Because you're going to wind up asking follow-ups if you're talking to somebody about that stuff. Right? It will not be particularly effective interview if you just read them off the page. You kind of want to have a conversation with somebody about that stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so looking ahead, we're coming into the home stretch for tonight. For next week, you have 3 things to read. I'll give you a preview of them in some detail. The Khalifa chapter is scanned as a PDF. It's up on Blackboard now. The other 2 are from the book. Okay, they're chapters from the book. And the overall question is inclusive schooling. Who is this school for, right? Khalifa talks about that in terms of a culturally responsive and expansive school. Constantia Harris and CASA talk about inclusive schooling. And Collier and Thomas are your first look at a particular curriculum area, and they're talking about literacy. But literacy, especially for y'all as school psychologists, is one of the bedrock pieces of what we do here, what we teach here, and whether or not kids belong here, right? So the ways in which we think about literacy curriculum has an enormous amount to do with who is this school for, right? And as a student, your ticket to belong or not belong in that school is going to have a lot to do with how well you're meeting the literacy expectations of that school. A ton, right? Especially in elementary school, especially. Your analysis is also due in a week. And then in 2 weeks, you have those 2 pieces are also scanned articles or the articles you'll get through Blackboard. And then we're meeting on Zoom again, okay, in 2 weeks. All right. All right, so to close up tonight, our final activity, I hope is fun. We're going to make some memes. Okay, so I'm going to send you this link to memebetter.com/generator. And what I'd like you to do is to make a meme about college and career readiness. Okay, so I'll walk you through one myself. Okay, what is it? 7:40 now. So we'll take till 5 of 8, and then at 5 of 8, I want everybody to come back, and you're going to share your screen with your meme on it, and we'll see all of them up there. Okay, so I'm going to show you how it works. Right. Oops. Let me go to that screen. There it is. All right. So this is the link. I'm going to send you the link in just a minute. You can use one of their graphics, or if you don't like that, you can load one from your own computer. I'm going to use one of my own. You could be snarky. You don't have to be snarky. I'm going to be snarky here for a minute. Let me see. I'm going to use this one. Okay. First line of text. Okay. And there's my meme. If you like school, you'll love work. Okay. Save it. And then you're going to share it with us. Okay. So I'm going to now send you the link in your chat. Here it comes. Okay. I'm going to give you 15 minutes. Okay. Until 5 of. I'm going to mute everybody, but I'm going to stay here. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat. Okay, and I'll answer your chat. Any questions before you go? All right, have fun. See you in a little bit.
I'm unmuted. Just a heads up.
I'm unmuting everybody and start to share. Let's see what you got.
It says that we can't share while someone else is sharing.
Oh, no. All right. So let's not do that. We'll just go one at a time. And I'll just call on everybody. Let's see. I'll just go down my list here. Sarah.
Okay.
Sweet. All right. You can stop sharing, please. Grace. Oh, we're speaking. Nice. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Stop sharing, please. Anthony? You guys are too much. Thank you. Courtney? Nice. Okay, thank you. Savannah?
Oh, it won't open. Sorry, it's not working.
Okay, we'll skip you for now. Kirsten?
Did it work? I can't tell.
I see Kirsten's screen, yes.
Okay. Does it show the picture though?
It does. It's okay.
Okay.
SAT prepare you for
All
this.
right.
Awesome. Okay, stop, please. Let's see who we got next. Theo. Sweet. Thank you.
All right, mine is working again, I think.
Yeah, okay, let's hit it. Let's see it.
Did it work? I don't know.
I see college. Thank you. Eunice? Nice. Thank you. And Selena? Ooh, cool. Catherine and then Brittany. Nice. Thank you. And Brittany, I think you're going to close us out.
All right, no pressure, right?
Right.
Let's see. Did that work?
Yes.
Okay.
You
I had to Google how to spell that.
guys are great. If you could save these, I would love to have them. I'll figure out a way. You could just email them to me. Might be the easiest instead of trying to set up a whole thing with Blackboard. All right, that was great. Thank you very much. We're even on time. And I'm going to save this if anybody wants to go back over it. It'll take a little while to download, and process, but it should be ready for you in a day or so. Okay? All right, I'll be around. Bye. Have a great week, everybody.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.